So like there's a Project Hopper and I'm always changing it. And I love tying sculpins and I'm sick and tired of coming up with new names. So it's going to be called Project Sculpin 1.0. This is must-see YouTube.
Dude, that's a big brown,
Buongiorno, principessa. It says made in Italy on these scissors, so I just had to open with the only Italian phrase I know. This is a funny looking vise, I know, but I'm going to show first of all how to make this wool head dubbing that we're going to use. So this is just a wool head fly, but I find that the more I can prepare the dubbing on this or the head material, the better it comes out. So what I've got is I've got hairline sculpin wool with a little bit of blue or purple deer hair in it. And as you can see, it's really thick, kind of unruly. Let me find this one. Look at this guy. That came in the thing. So don't be alarmed. This is how it's supposed to come. Now, taking this and like opening it up and blending it with your fingers is going to be really hard. So what I've done is I've taken some sections that I'm going to be working with. I want my dubbing to be about yay long. So I have farmed out a few pieces. And keep in mind, this piece right here is way harder than the rest. So it's going to take a little bit to open up, but it's going to be way more than these other pieces. But that's okay because I'm trying to make kind of a golden sculpinish color, and this is going to be my main color. So anyway, I'll just start opening this up and breaking it down. What I've got is a carding block. I think I bought this on Etsy. Let's see. This is like an old scrap piece of plywood. And I just stapled it onto this. And then I just have a dog slicker brush. You can use whatever you like, but I've found the most success with this stuff. And this works really, really well for blending all kinds of stuff. Like bruiser blend, hint, hint, and other stuff. All right, so here's how we're going to do this. These three are pretty sparse. This one I'm going to have to open up a little more. So before I get the brushes involved, I'm just going to try to do as much by hand as I can. And this is a huge pain in the butt. This will make you throw stuff against the wall. But just go slow. Don't use too much pressure, or else you'll tear your arms up. This stuff is so gnarly sometimes. All right, here we go. So I've got that pretty much broken up as well as I need it. Okay, so from here, I've got angles going this way on this, and I'm going to use that to my advantage. These are angling down and across. I don't know if that makes any sense, but what I'm going to do is just kind of start with some lighter strokes and just moving it around. So as you can see, if I push down this way, it just wants to mash it all down in there. And I can take this brush and just go the opposite way and pull it all out. Okay. So to give yourself a head start, you could even break it up. But at the end of the day, I'm just going to start doing this, some real light strokes, mostly just to break up all this stuff before I add much pressure. And it takes a while. But this is enough to do a lot of sculpin heads. Okay. If you have colors that don't want to break up, you just gently persuade them. Suchly, thusly. It's a lot easier to break it apart now that it's had a few reps through the old freaking tooth grinder. You will bleed doing this. You're going to tear up your knuckles at one point, so just be ready for it, So as you can see, these colors are starting to come together nicely. And so I'm going to just kind of paint a thin layer, if I can, over this and all these little chunks that I see forming. And try to just thinly spread them out on top of the other colors. But if you're using the angle of the teeth to your advantage, you can just pick it up and put it right back down. This is actually quite fun. you just don't want your like sports ball buddies to come over while you're doing this, because then you look like, you know, someone who does crafts without fish on the other end of it, which totally not cool. Anyway, so just kidding. That was a joke for all of you who are writing hate emails right now. I tend to do crafting myself. Let's see. Let's open this up. And we're getting real close to our color. All right, so now at this point I can kind of look and see what the general color is going to be. That's pretty good, because I'm going to match this with, let me just see if I can find it, with that Zonker strip. So I like how that's looking. We'll probably just leave it as is, not add any more color. But keep in mind, if you add dark colors to this, a little goes a long way. So darker colors are harder to overcome. So the other thing you can do now that I've done quite a bit is, let's say that, you know, I want to do some wool head sculpins, but I also want to add some flash to some of them. So what I can do is I'm going to take half of that dubbing I just made, and I'm going to put in some ice dub now, just right on top. Boom, boom. And now we're going to blend that up, same way. And if you add too much flash, it can kind of mess with the integrity of the wool head, but this much not going to be an issue at all. So now you can do wool heads with all kinds of stuff mixed in. Like you could mix in, there you go, I'm pretty much there. So that's super easy. You could mix in all kinds of stuff. You could put UV dubbing in here. You could do all kinds of different colors of flash. But anyway, this is much easier to use and tie with than trying to pull it right off the pelt. So now that we have this, how about we tie a fly? All right, so we have a new Sculpin pattern. It's going to be called the Project Sculpin, just because I'm always messing with new Sculpins. And I don't want to come up with a name every time that I'm doing this. So anyway, this is Project Sculpin number 1. And I got to give a huge shout out to old Kelly Gallup on this one. He had a really cool technique on wool heads back in the day that I watched, and I implemented that on this fly, and you'll see that as I do the head. So shout out to Kelly. And here I go talking way too much on a video because I'm talking about Kelly Gallup. So Brigham, don't laugh. Don't laugh. Okay? It's not funny. All right? Anyway, the other thing is I've been getting a lot of comments on when are you going to tie your beard into a fly? Well, guess what? Today's the day that I tell you that I'm never going to do it. So anyway, beard hair is really coarse. All right, let's get some thread on this hook. I'm using some 210 denier. I'm using this new copter bobbin because it was sitting on my desk and asked to be put in the game. So here we are. Dress that hook, and I'm going to just make a simple dubbed body out of some Ripple ice dub. I'm going to go, let's see, from about back here, dub a little bit on, maybe more than a little bit, about that much. And I'm going to wrap this first section of dubbing pretty thick and about to right here, okay? So at this point, we're going to put on the weighting system, the weights of the fly. So this is a belly scratcher style weighting system that we've been playing with for several years. What it is it allows the beads to not sit on the hook shank. They're tied on a wire. They sit outside the hook shank, and it provides really good keeling action on this. So I'm going to take a section of like bead lawn or some sort of articulation wire. We're going to tie it in like this and just fold this over and crank down just like that. So wrap this back. Quite a bit of thread here because we don't want that to pull out. And just as insurance, we're going to put a little of this super glue right there. All right, so we're ready to make the body of the fly. which is going to be more ice stub, but I'm going to put it in a loop this time because I want it to pick out. So we'll put it in a loop, and that loop's going to end about right here. All right, so what I do is sometimes I get talking when I'm doing tutorials, and I always yank too hard and break my dubbing loop. So I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen this time. I'm going to wrap this around and double it up. Okay, I'm glad that happened so I could show you this hack. Critical with this to go around all of them, and that will close off that dubbing loop back to normally programmed television or whatever they say. Gosh dang it. And I'm going to not pull too hard on this one. There we go. All right, so if you can see if you pull it out of the corner of the bag, you can get like a really almost clean dubbing loop. Twist that sucker up. And before I wrap this, I'm going to free some of these fibers just a little bit. You don't have to get too gnarly in here. And then I'm just going to use a rotary technique to wrap this up. So once I get to about the tie-off point, I'll keep it a little clean and brush some of these fibers out of the way. Just like that. And then they all fell back in when I tied it. So watch. This is my fly, not yours, dubbing. Stop trying to steal the show. Once that dubbing loop is tied down, you know, I clean up the head just like that. And then we'll take this Velcro and we'll brush all this out. We want to make it buggy. I know what you're thinking. This is a Sculpin. You haven't even tied in a tail yet. You missed a step. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. So just watch how we do this. So I'm just going to take those and put them like this. I'm going to put two 3.8 millimeter beads on here. It really doesn't matter what color, what style, any of that. Just put beads on there. I have, what do I have? I think I have like a little pink one, a little old like brass colored one. They were on my desk, so that's what I grabbed. But anyway, you can put 2, you can put 3, you can put 4 on there. So this fly, you can vary the weight on this fly a lot, and it's not going to change the appearance of the fly at all because your beads are externally placed. You could make a loop of beads that big on there if you wanted. All right, so I'll just put 2. I'm going to wrap this down and pull it tight. You see how I did that? It was a little bit loose, and I just put some wraps and pulled it tight. And then I'm going to fold it on itself again. If you don't do that, the beads will come out. You can do this also with braided fishing line, that kind of stuff. It all works pretty well. I'm going to take my flush cutters and just get rid of that now. And some super glue. Did I mention that this fly is a very involved fly? This isn't one that you're going to want to sit down and tie dozens of, but you're going to want a few of them in your box for when the fish don't eat other stuff. So it is a long, involved tie. Definitely not the simplest of bugs. But anyway, so that's what our underbody is going to look like on this Sculpin. The next step is I'm going to take a big game zonker strip from Fulling Mill. Okay, and from the top down camera is probably the easiest way to see this. So I'll try to hold this in view. Okay, so these zonker strips from Fulling Mill are absolutely phenomenal. You can see the fibers are all uniform, and the leather is also great as well. But if you tie a piece of leather this thick on a fly this big, and you want the tail to kick around, it's not going to do it. This is just too bulky. So you have to come in here and trim this to an angle. It seems like a kind of an unimportant step, but it really does make a difference. So what I'm going to do, I've got these Renomed scissors for this because they're not serrated, and I can easily slide them exactly where I want them to go. And I'm just going to make a cut about like that. And then on this side, this is the hard one. Let's see if I can pull it off. Close. So I just need a little more off of here. All right, and as you can see, the edge of this zonker strip's kind of screwy too, so we'll clean that up. But anyway, at the end of the day, we end up with something like that, which when you turn it over, it kind of creates a nice little point out of rabbit. All right, to put this on, I'm going to turn it the orientation that it's going to swim, and let's say that I want that tail to hang out about right there. I'm marking it with my thumb, and then I'm going to poke the hook through the leather. You heard that barb snap into place. Okay. All right, so here we have the zonker strip in place. Before I pull it and tie it down, I'm just going to part this again. Not going to matter too much. But now I'm going to slide this down, pull the zonker strip forward, and now take the hair and slightly moisten the hair as I pull it this way. And what will happen is you'll be able to pull all the hair up to expose just a kind of a bare zonker strip tie down spot right there. And if you moisten just one side and not the other, it will kind of stay there if you don't grab it. So anyway, just pull that how you want it, and then I'm going to come over top of this, tie it down, and then with my same non-serrated scissors I can slide in there and just get nothing but zonker strip and pull that out. The reason I like to do that is because if you just hack down on the zonker strip, then this part you lose about, I don't know, half an inch of zonker strip every time you just hack it off, which I do sometimes as well. All right, so here we have the beginning of a cool sculpin shape. One of the big knocks on rabbit is it goes really thin when it gets wet. And so I'm going to build some bulk on the sides of this fly. The first time I saw this done was by a dude named Daniel Seaman, and who knows what he's doing. He's probably smoking some meat and a cigar at the same time right now. So shout out to you. Anyway, so you can see this tab right here. I'm going to put a tab of rabbit on each side, one over here and one over here. But I'm going to shorten the tie-in point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this rabbit, and I'm just going to cut a little tiny angle out of that. See that? So that turns into my tie-in point right there. Okay, so before I tie that in, I'm going to put a little bit of super glue on this head. Good stuff likes to slide around. We're going to use some real pressure here. So I'll tie in this tab right here. With the super glue, I can just kind of tack it in place like this and then come over that with thread. So there you go. I've got another piece of rabbit tied in here. I guess that's the easiest way to show how to do this. I'm just going to come in here, again, non-serrated scissors, and trim that. That's maybe just a touch long. I'll come in there. I was trying to show you, this is how I normally would do it. Right there. So as you can see, that's got a real cool shape that's starting to form. Okay, now on this side, we're going to do the same thing. That's going to be like this, so we're going to take off this bottom corner here. Like that. So there's our bottom corner off of there. Tie it in the same way. I'm all hands for a second. Anyway, and then we'll just trim this one to the same length as the other one, roughly. Just eyeball it. Okay. Now, if you look at how this is looking now, like look at that shape so far. I mean, that's awesome. You could fish it just like that. But it's possible to make it awesomer. Now it's time to build the head. This is where the rubber meets the road, as they say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to GSP thread because I like how slick it is. The strength is good, but the slickness is really what I'm needing here. So in order to do that, I'm just going to take my thread forward. I don't even have to whip finish, tie that off, and I'm just going to take my GSP, wrap backward, and then just trim the tag and the other thread at the same time. All right, so we're ready to rumble. Let's find the wool that we just blended up, this guy right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to preen this with our hands. So I'm going to pull, I don't know, a healthy clump. This is going to kind of be the trial and error. The first few of these that you do, you could even like go in and cut the wool off and try again if you want. But the fly is not too bad to tie up to this point. It's really, really quite simple. But what I'm saying is it's going to take a few times to get the right amount of wool figured out. So I don't know how much that is, but that's about how much is going in. I'll pinch it down. And if it feels like there's a little bit too much bulk here, it should feel like your fingers are all just kind of pinching together. I'm going to pull a little bit of that out because it's critical that when I put this on here that it doesn't spin around. And if you have too big of a clump of wool, it will do that. So this is the only section of wool that I'm going to tie in the traditional way, just to kind of give us a base. But I'm going to put this right on top here, and I'm just going to do my turns all right in the same spot and really crank down on that. Okay, so there's clump of wool number 1. All right, so we have another clump ready to roll. Now check this out. This is where old KG comes into play. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my thread and I'm going to put this on the thread with my thumb like this. You could probably see this in both videos, both overhead and not. From here, I'm going to tighten up that bobbin. From here, see how easy that slides up and down? I'm just going to grab this and pull it down. And I'm going to turn it so that you can see it. See how it makes an angle, like an arced shape? So what you do is you just take that little curved shape and you just suck it up right underneath the other wrap that you just put in there and then open it back up. That's the only part, is you got to open it up. With a little bit of practice, it's real easy. So there you go. 2 sections of wool tied in right on top of each other. Now on this section, I'll try to, let's see, how do I do this? I don't know if you can see this, but I'm going to pull the bottom section back and push my thread in between that and the top one to get in front of those 2 sections of wool. Let's see, like this. So I'm going to pull all those back, put my thread up the side, and just mash it in place. So this is a perfect amount, I think, of extra room to play with. For added durability, you can come in here with just a little bit of super glue. Don't use very much because if it bleeds into the wool, it makes it hard to trim and brush and all that stuff. So little tiny bit of super glue. We're going to let that sit. So starting to look ugly. That means you got a good sculpin. All right, 2 more clumps. The front 2 clumps could be maybe just a little smaller than the back 2 clumps, but if they're too big, sometimes there's a little band of thread as you trim it. Not a big deal, but we'll try not to have that. All right, so man, it's real easy to pull off too much wool. Take it out, and you got to put it back in. Boom. I think we're in. All right, so same technique there. Take the thread out, push your thumb down, bend it over, and now I'm just going to come over the top of the wool and spread that one out. Thread tension is real tricky here. This is like maybe 5 out of 5 difficulty skill builder. But as you can see, I've moved stuff around. The GSP allows me to wrap in the same spot, and it will slip through the fibers really well without grabbing the little danglers. And then this is the hardest piece of foam to place, or foam. This is wool, Brigham. It's summertime in my mind. I've been listening to reggae too much. There's no such thing as too much reggae, though. Right, Rig?
Endless summer.
Endless summer. It's the elevator's fault, you dirty dogs. All right, so here we've got a chunk of wool now. Man, I pulled out too much again. Take your time. You listen to Davy McPhail. Take your time. It's up to yourself. That's a bad impersonation. All right. All right, here we go. The last one in place. Just hold that down with your offhand. Rotate that around. Up into the gap it goes. Shout out again to Kelly Gallup for teaching me how to do that. So, because I've prepped this wool so well, it just all goes in and there's not a lot of stuff that's crossed up in there. It's going to make it really easy to trim. So again, bring it to the side, bring everything back, and then this one goes right up into the eye. Now, you could try to whip finish that. I was at a show in New Jersey. And by the way, the New Jersey International Fly Tying Symposium is awesome. The people there are great. Fishing on the coast is awesome, but we had a great time. So this is where I was playing with this fly the most. I was doing the whole development, like 2 days of nothing but sculpins. People were getting sick of it. Anyway, shout out to you Jerseyans. We're going to pull this stuff out of the way. And as you can see, I started my super glue about 1 inch back on my thread so that I could come in here with my fingers and get this out of the way. And then I'm just going to really mash that thread down in there, and now it's super glued in place, and now the thread can come off of there. All right, now the games shall begin. You can do this if you want, it helps, but moisten down the rabbit wings before you do this. Kind of keep them out of the way. I'm using a little cup on the desk. I'm totally not using saliva, I promise. Maybe. All right. Oh, I got rabbit in my mouth. I don't know how it happened. Good. It's like when your dog comes up and licks your face from close proximity. All right, so the first thing we need to do is we need to shift a little bit of the wool to the outside. So I'm going to grab the wool and just kind of give it one of those. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, so we have the wool shifted around, and then grab I just use some straight tweezers that are pretty strong, and I just start picking this out a little bit, okay? And a lot of this will come out when you do this if you go really hard. So just kind of go gentle at first, and as you can see, wow, does this look the same as my hair rig in the morning?
Uncanny.
Uncanny?
Yeah.
All right.
Flawless.
I think you're being a little bit too over the edge on the nice side now.
Sure.
Okay, I appreciate it.
I don't know if that was a compliment, but...
Oh, it was a bash?
No.
Well, we gotta get along, man. Yeah. Okay. All right, so I'm just taking a plastic Stomfo comb and I'm gonna brush this fly back. And you can see now that this head is starting to take shape already before we even start to trim it, okay? And a rotary vise makes this so awesome. Like deer hair bugs, wool head, all this stuff, I leave it in there, while I'm brushing and trimming. It gives a really good base point. Whoa, this thing looks like a mix between Bob Ross and like the lion on Wizard of Oz, right? Okay, so the big challenge with sculpins is this. The heads are fairly wide and flat. I'm not going to make a Brigham joke there, but I've thought about one. So what we're going to do is we want the bottom of the head to be fairly flush. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my scissors and keep them at an angle. And as I cut this, I'm going to just rotate the vise back and forth so that I can make sure that the angle is kept. So I'm going to just start about like this. And I'm just going to go down one way, and then every time I go back, I'm just kind of taking my scissors and rocking them back as I move back and forth, if that makes any sense. So just do light cuts and then brush it out and then go in a little bit deeper. So each angle, see how I'm quite a bit more aggressive on the angle. Never get in there like this with your scissors. The angle of the head is going this way, okay? So this cut will look terrible, okay? Don't do it. So keep going pretty aggressively on this one because the bottom of the fly is going to sit nice and flat, okay? So Here we go. This is looking really nice. It's almost like I spent nothing but, weeks tying this bug. So as you can see, I just keep rotating the vise back and forth, and that way it makes it nice and rounded. But as you can see, we're pretty flat there on the bottom. Now let's make the head. So this angle is going to be a lot more gentle at first, and then we'll get a little more extreme. I'll comb this back first. All right, so here's how this is going to look. We're going to start with something like this, and then we're just going to angle back and forth, but not nearly as much as we did on the back. So you can see this wool head is starting to come into play. And do everything you can to keep the angle the same as you go back. Cool thing about wool is it's a lot more forgiving than deer hair. Like if you make a mistake, sometimes you can brush it out, or just try again. But deer hair hates everybody. All right, so here's another thing. Sometimes I'll bring my thumb over here so I can rest it if I'm doing if I am shaky, if I'm nervous that Brigham's staring over my shoulder while I'm doing this.
Skill Builder 21.
Skill Builder 21, is that where this is going to be?
Bracing your scissors.
Bracing my scissors. Oh, Skill Builder 21, we have bracing scissors. Brigham is good at remembering stuff. All right, so this is getting close. I'm going to come back all the way up here and maybe trim off some of those stragglers, but they'll blend into the rest of the fly. And you can do this, as much as you feel like you need to. Just don't take any big cuts at this point. Bring the old fingers back, and it looks like we need a little bit of work here. All right, so we could spend hours just picking out all these little stragglers. Okay, I'm going to look at it from straight on, and it looks like we're a little thick right here. It's a very common place to be too thick because I can't see going that way. All right, so I'm kind of liking the shape of that guy right there. So now we're going to add a lot of detail to it. This is actually not too difficult, and it makes it look amazing in my opinion. So we're going to make little eyes in this bad boy. And this is the thing that people ask me more than anything is how do you make the eyes? So I'm just going to take a Sharpie and I'm going to make little eye sockets, okay? So the Sculpin eyes kind of sit like on this little ledge, and to make it look like it's kind of more 3D, I'm just going to build some eyeshadow into this fella. So about like that. Some eye stripage, and then we can even like continue on with like the barring from the rabbit strips. So at this point you can take this is just like an olive Sharpie. You can take olive or brown or any of that stuff. And we're just going to make the head, a little more sculpin-y. All right, so a little bit of brown here can get blended in. If you put a little bit on there, you can push it with your finger a little bit. And then right here, I use a little bit of red for the gills as they open up. You know, those suckers, when they flee, they give off a little bit of gillage. All right, so now this is the part that is maybe the most difficult part of the fly, aside from the head. I've done this before with like deer hair, but I'm going to burn a socket out of this wool with a cautery tool. Now, when I first started doing this, I was looking for just the right size nail, because I was heating a nail up to be like red hot, and I was poking it in there and hoping it was the right size. And I walked downstairs and Paul goes, "Why don't you just use a cautery tool?" And I'm just like, I'm the biggest idiot ever. That's exactly the right answer. And here's how I do it. So the first thing I do is I'm going to make an eye saw. I'm going to poke the Sharpie in there, make it really dark, just to kind of give me an idea of how it's going to look. So that one's right there. This one's going to be right here. Okay, so you can see I have a little dark spot. So now what I'm going to do is take the cautery tool. I'm going to go in here and just cut out a little circular hole here. So it looks like that. Can you see that well at all? No? And then we're going to... Okay, and then the other one's going to be over here. So there's the other hole. So we're just going to kind of match them up to see if they match. One's a little bigger than the other. Okay, now this part of the fly, we're just going to put resin in there, but there's a certain way to do it. So I've got both thin Solarez and medium Solarez. So with the thin, I'm going to go down here and just put some in there and kind of move it around a little bit. And what that's doing is it's creating just kind of a cured socket. It's going to make it so that this other big old beady eye is going to stay in place when we cure it. So just do it on both sides. And in it goes. All right. And to finish off, I used to use the thick resin, but it kind of would ball up too much. So I'm going to use the medium and just put that inside the socket, fill it up, and just kind of let it level off. And you have an eye like that. Okay, let's see if we can get it on the other side now. All right, so if we did it right, it should look about like this. So, I mean, that's an extra step. I don't know if it makes the fly any better, but that's the deal with these project flies. They're supposed to be just a project. We're trying to get them better, trying to make them super detailed, and it's more of just kind of a project for me to see if I can push the limits of like a real fly. Now, let's show you what this looks like this. Okay, and then on the flat surface, you can see. So we've got a really nice triangular shape, and I even moistened these rabbit fibers. And we can tie it down to about that big, like a little tiny one proportionately. So anyway, have fun with this one. This one will test your wool tying abilities, but it's a ton of fun. And also think about what it would look like with a flash head. So there you have it. Project Sculpin.